A billionaire is seconds away from signing the most important contract of his life. But a little girl makes an urgent signal. You need to leave now. Just before we start, this community spans every continent. Drop your city's name if you feel comfortable sharing. The $70 billion contract lay on the mahogany table like a sleeping dragon, its pages crisp and white under the crystal chandelier of the Sterling Tower's executive boardroom. Marcus Sterling adjusted his Italian silk tie for the third time in 5 minutes, his hands steady despite the electricity crackling through his veins. At 36 years old, he had built his tech empire from a college dormitory to this moment, this precise second where everything he had sacrificed would finally crystallize into the largest merger in Silicon Valley history. Mr. Sterling, the representatives from Chen Industries will be here in approximately 8 minutes, his assistant announced from the doorway, her voice professional but unable to hide the excitement trembling beneath. This wasn't just Marcus's victory. It was everyone's who had believed in him. The boardroom buzzed with pre-celebration energy. His legal team shuffled papers, his CFO reviewed final numbers on her tablet, and his business partner of 12 years, Richard Blackwood, stood by the window overlooking Manhattan, his phone pressed to his ear. Richard had been there from the beginning, when they were two ambitious kids with a dream and a maxed-out credit card. Now they were about to become legends. Marcus walked to the beverage station to pour himself water, his mind racing through every detail, every clause, every contingency they had prepared for over 18 months of negotiations. He didn't notice the small figure in the corner until a gentle tug on his sleeve made him look down. Lily Martinez stood there, her dark brown eyes wide and intense, her tiny hands moving with urgent precision in the language she and Marcus had been secretly learning together for the past 6 months. The 6-year-old daughter of his housekeeper, Sophia Martinez, wasn't supposed to be here. Sophia had brought her to work today because of an emergency with Lily's usual caregiver, and Marcus had assured her it would be fine, that Lily could stay in the employee lounge with her coloring books. But Lily wasn't coloring now. Her small hands were forming signs with a frantic desperation that made Marcus's pulse quicken. "Danger," she signed, her fingers sharp and clear. "Bad man. Phone call. You must go. Now." Marcus glanced around the room. No one was paying attention to them. To everyone else, Lily was invisible, just a silent child in the corner, a minor inconvenience on the most important day of Sterling Technologies' existence. But Marcus had learned something about Lily over the past months, something that made him pause, even now, with everything on the line. She saw things others didn't. She noticed details that adults overlooked. Being deaf had made her extraordinarily observant, her eyes catching every micro-expression, every subtle movement, every inconsistency in the world around her. "Lily, sweetheart. What's wrong?" Marcus signed back, kneeling down to her level, his expensive suit pants touching the carpet. His hands moved slowly, carefully, forming each sign with the precision she had taught him to use. "The man by the window," Lily signed, her eyes darting toward Richard. "I saw him on phone. He said bad words. About you. About the paper. He said, 'It's done,' and he won't see it coming." Marcus felt ice water flood his veins. He looked toward Richard, who was still on his phone, his back to the room, his voice too low to hear over the ambient conversation. Marcus had known Richard for 12 years. They had built this company together, weathered every storm together, celebrated every victory together. Richard was the brother he had chosen, the partner he trusted with everything. But Lily's hands were still moving, still urgent. "Please," she signed, tears forming in her eyes. "I'm not lying. I promise. I heard him. Bad. Very bad." The assistant appeared at the door again. "Mr. Sterling, Chen Industries is in the building." "They're on their way up." This was it, the moment he had worked toward his entire adult life, the validation of every all-nighter, every risk, every sacrifice, $70 billion, legacy, history, everything, or trust the signs of a 6-year-old girl who couldn't even speak. Marcus looked into Lily's eyes, those impossibly earnest brown eyes that had never lied to him. Not once in the 6 months since Sophia had started working for him, and he had discovered that Lily was learning sign language at her special school. He had been captivated by her intelligence, her resilience, her joy, despite the silence that surrounded her. He had started learning ASL secretly, wanting to communicate with her, to see the world through her unique perspective. And what he had discovered was that Lily saw more clearly than most adults ever would. "Everyone, I need 5 minutes," Marcus announced, standing up. The room fell silent, confusion rippling through the assembled executives. Richard turned from the window, his phone call apparently finished, his expression questioning. "Marcus, they're about to walk in," Richard said, his voice smooth and confident. "Everything's ready." "This is it, brother. This is what we've worked for." "I know," Marcus replied, his mind racing at supersonic speed. "I just need 5 minutes, something I need to verify." He turned to his head of security, a former FBI agent named Catherine Moore. "Catherine, I need you to check something for me right now, discreetly." He pulled her aside, away from the others, and whispered instructions that made her eyebrows raise. She nodded once, sharply, and left the room with swift purpose. Marcus checked his watch. 4 minutes until Chen Industries arrived. 4 minutes to either confirm the paranoid suspicions planted by a child or prove that stress was making him lose his mind. Lily stood in the corner, her hands clasped together, her eyes never leaving Marcus's face. Sophia appeared at the door, frantic. "Lily, I'm so sorry, Mr. Sterling. I told her to stay in the lounge." "Again, it's fine, Sophia," Marcus said gently. "Actually, Lily might have just saved us all." He saw Sophia's confused expression, but didn't elaborate. Instead, he walked back to the contract on the table, his hands hovering over the pages without touching them, his mind working through possibilities, scenarios, outcomes. Richard approached him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Cold feet?" he asked with a laugh that sounded just slightly off now that Marcus was listening for it. "Marcus, this is normal. The magnitude of what we're about to do, it's overwhelming. But we've got this. We've checked everything 100 times. This contract is bulletproof. Is it?" Marcus asked quietly, his eyes meeting Richard's. For just a fraction of a second, something flickered in Richard's expression. Something that might have been surprise, or might have been fear, or might have been nothing at all. The door opened. Catherine Moore returned, her face professionally neutral, but Marcus had worked with her long enough to see the tension in her jaw, the controlled urgency in her movement. She handed him a tablet without a word. Marcus looked at the screen, his blood turned to ice, then fire, then ice again. The documents Catherine had pulled up in those 3 minutes showed wire transfers, offshore accounts, and email communications that painted a picture so devastating, so complete, that Marcus actually felt his knees weaken. "Mr. Sterling," the assistant called from the door, her voice bright with anticipation. "Chen Industries has arrived. They're ready for you in the—" "Tell them the deal is off," Marcus said, his voice cutting through the room like a knife through silk. The reaction was instantaneous. Gasps, confusion, Richard's face draining of color. "Marcus, what are you—" Richard started. "It's off," Marcus repeated, his voice stronger now, colder, the voice of a man who had just seen betrayal in high definition. "Everyone out except Richard and Catherine, now." The room emptied in a chaos of protests and confusion, executives and lawyers filing out with backward glances and whispered speculation. Sophia grabbed Lily, pulling her toward the door, but Marcus held up a hand. "Sophia, Lily can stay. Actually, I'd like her to stay. She deserves to see this." When the door closed, leaving only the 4 of them, Marcus turned to Richard, his partner, his brother, his betrayer. 12 years, Marcus said softly. 12 years we built this together, and you were going to destroy it all. For what? Money? Revenge? What? Richard's face had gone from pale to red, his hands clenching at his sides. I don't know what you're talking about. Marcus, you're making a terrible mistake. Chen Industries is going to walk, and this deal will never— The deal was poison, Marcus interrupted, holding up the tablet. The contract Chen Industries brought had clauses buried so deep that even our lawyers missed them. Clauses that would have transferred controlling interest to a shell corporation that you own. You weren't making us rich, Richard. You were staging a coup, a $70 billion theft dressed up as the deal of the century. The silence that followed was deafening. Richard stared at Marcus, and for a long moment the mask held. Then, slowly, it cracked. The friendly expression melted away, replaced by something cold and calculating and utterly foreign. How? Richard asked simply. We were minutes away. How did you find out? Marcus looked down at Lily, who was holding her mother's hand, but watching the scene with those observant, intelligent eyes. He knelt down again, and this time he signed deliberately carefully, making sure Lily understood every word. Thank you, he signed. You saved me. You saved everyone. You are the bravest person in this room. Lily's face broke into a smile, tears streaming down her cheeks, and she signed back, You listened. You believed me. Marcus stood, turning back to Richard. She heard you, he said simply. Lily heard your phone call. She read your lips. She saw your expression. And she knew something was wrong, something that a 6-year-old girl shouldn't have to know about, something dark and evil and corrupt. But she had the courage to tell me, and I had the sense to listen to her instead of my own ego. Richard laughed, a bitter sound without humor. A deaf kid. I was brought down by a deaf kid who can't even talk. That's rich, Marcus. That's really rich. You know what? Fine. You caught me. Congratulations. But you've still lost. Chen Industries is walking out that door right now, and they won't come back. You've just cost yourself the biggest deal in tech history because you believed a child who probably saw me talking to my wife about dinner plans. You're finished, Marcus. Even without my plan, you're finished. You need this deal, and everyone knows it. Catherine Moore stepped forward, her phone in her hand. FBI is on their way, she said calmly. I've already sent them the evidence. Mr. Blackwood, I'm going to have to ask you to remain here until they arrive. Attempted corporate fraud at this level is a federal offense. Richard's face went through a rapid series of expressions, each one more desperate than the last, before settling on cold resignation. 12 years, he said, echoing Marcus's earlier words. 12 years I watched you get all the credit, all the glory, all the recognition. I was the one doing the real work, Marcus. I was the one making the hard decisions while you played tech visionary in front of cameras. I earned this. I deserved this. And you're going to crash and burn without me. Mark my words. Sterling Technologies is finished. Marcus felt the weight of those words, felt the truth in them. Without this deal, his company was in serious trouble. He had bet everything on this merger, had leveraged assets, had made promises to investors. Richard was right about one thing. This was going to hurt. This was going to cost him dearly. But as he looked at Lily, still holding her mother's hand, still watching with those clear, honest eyes, Marcus knew he had made the right choice. Maybe you're right, Marcus said quietly. Maybe I will crash and burn. Maybe I'll lose everything, but I'll lose it with my integrity intact. I'll lose it knowing I didn't build my empire on betrayal. I'll lose it knowing that I listened when it mattered most, that I trusted the right person when it counted. And you know what, Richard? I'll sleep at night. Can you say the same? The door opened. 2 FBI agents entered, their badges already out, their expressions professionally neutral. As they read Richard his rights and led him from the room, Marcus sank into one of the leather chairs, the enormity of what had just happened crashing over him like a tidal wave. He had just blown up his company's future. He had just lost $70 billion. He had just destroyed everything he had worked for. The board would probably force him out. The investors would flee. Sterling Technologies might not survive the month, but he had done the right thing. He had listened to Lily. He had chosen truth over triumph. He had chosen integrity over empire, and that had to count for something. It had to, right? The media firestorm erupted within hours, consuming Marcus's life like wildfire through a drought-stricken forest. By sunset on that catastrophic Friday, his face was on every financial news channel, his name trending across social media platforms, his phone exploding with calls from investors, board members, and journalists hungry for the story of the decade. The headlines scream variations of the same theme. Tech titan torpedoes own empire. Sterling loses billions in last-minute deal collapse. From hero to zero, the spectacular fall of Marcus Sterling. Marcus sat in his penthouse office long after everyone else had gone home, the Manhattan skyline glittering through floor-to-ceiling windows like a universe of indifferent stars. His company's stock had dropped 43% in the final hours of trading, wiping out billions in market value. His phone had buzzed itself into silence with resignation letters from key executives, threats from furious investors, and gleeful messages from competitors who smelled blood in the water. Catherine Moore had stayed, though. She sat across from him now, her laptop open, her expression grave. "The FBI confirmed everything we found," she said quietly. "Richard had been planning this for almost 2 years. The Chen Industries deal was the final piece. If you had signed, you would have lost control of Sterling Technologies within 90 days. Everything you built would have been his, or rather, his and his partners." "His partners?" Marcus asked, his voice hoarse from hours of conference calls with damage control teams. "A consortium of foreign investors, some with questionable backgrounds. The FBI is still unraveling it, but it looks like Richard had gambling debts, serious ones. This was his way out, and his way to finally beat you." Catherine paused, choosing her words carefully. "Marcus, you did the right thing. You know that, right? If you had signed that contract, you would have lost everything anyway. At least this way, you still have control. You still have a chance." Marcus laughed, a sound completely devoid of humor. "Control of what? A sinking ship. Half my executive team has resigned. 2 of our biggest clients just terminated their contracts. The banks are calling in loans. The board is scheduling an emergency meeting to discuss my removal as CEO. I'm being sued by investors who claim I acted recklessly. I destroyed my company, Catherine. I destroyed everything." "You saved your company from a hostile takeover disguised as a merger. There's a difference. Try explaining that to the shareholders who lost millions today." Marcus rubbed his eyes, exhaustion pulling at him like gravity. He hadn't slept in 36 hours, hadn't eaten anything except coffee and the growing dread in his stomach. Maybe Richard was right. Maybe I'm finished. A soft knock on the door interrupted them. Marcus looked up to see Sophia Martinez standing in the doorway, Lily beside her, both of them looking small and uncertain in the vast office space. "Mr. Sterling," Sophia said quietly, her accent thickening with nervousness, "I'm so sorry to bother you. I know this is a terrible time. I just wanted to apologize again for Lily being in that meeting. If I had known that it would cause all this trouble, I would never—" "Sophia, stop," Marcus said gently, standing up and walking over to them. "Lily didn't cause any of this. Lily saved me from making the biggest mistake of my life. Lily is a hero. The only hero in this whole mess." Lily looked up at him, her brown eyes searching his face, and signed a question. "Are you angry at me? Everyone is saying you lost money because of me." Marcus felt something crack inside his chest. He knelt down, taking his time to form each sign with care. "Listen to me, Lily. Listen carefully. You are not responsible for what happened. You did nothing wrong. You saw something bad, and you had the courage to tell me about it. That takes incredible bravery. What happened today, the money we lost, the problems we're facing, none of that is your fault. That's all on the bad man who tried to hurt us, and on me for not seeing it sooner. Do you understand? Lily nodded slowly, but Marcus could see the doubt lingering in her expression, the weight she was trying to carry despite her 6 years. I heard people talking, she signed. They said you should have signed the paper. They said you shouldn't have listened to a kid. They said I'm just a deaf girl who doesn't understand business. They're wrong, Marcus signed fiercely. They're completely wrong. You understood what mattered most. You understood honesty and truth and loyalty. That's more important than any business deal. You are smart and brave and amazing, and I'm honored that you trusted me enough to tell me what you saw. Sophia was crying now, her hand over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Mr. Sterling, I don't know what to say. Thank you. Thank you for being kind to my daughter. Most people, they don't even see her. They look right through her like she's not there. But you see her, you listen to her, you make her feel important. She is important, Marcus said, standing up. She's more important than she knows. He turned to Catherine. Can you give us a minute? Catherine nodded and left the office, closing the door softly behind her. Marcus walked back to his desk, pulled out a chair, and gestured for Sophia and Lily to sit. He settled into his own chair, suddenly feeling the full weight of his 36 years, of the empire he had built and might now lose. Sophia, I need to tell you something. Sterling Technologies is in serious trouble. We lost a massive deal today, and the consequences are going to be severe. I'm probably going to have to make some very difficult decisions in the coming weeks. There will be layoffs, budget cuts, restructuring. I wanted you to hear this from me directly, because you and Lily deserve to know what's coming. Sophia's face paled, her hands gripping Lily's shoulders. Are you saying that I'm going to lose my job? No, Marcus said firmly. Absolutely not. Whatever happens to this company, whatever I have to cut, whoever I have to let go, you and your position are secure. I promise you that. But I wanted you to understand the situation, to know that things are going to be difficult for a while. The media attention, the financial pressure, it's going to get worse before it gets better. Mr. Sterling, Sophia said, her voice trembling, I need you to understand something too. I'm just a housekeeper. I clean homes. I take care of people. I don't understand business or mergers or stock prices, but I understand good people and bad people, and you are a good person. What you did today, stopping that deal because my daughter warned you, that wasn't stupid or reckless. That was character. That was integrity. My husband, before he died, he used to say that a man's worth isn't measured by what he has, but by what he's willing to lose for what's right. You lost billions today, but you kept your soul. That has to count for something. Marcus felt his throat tighten, emotion threatening to overwhelm him. For hours, everyone had been telling him he was a fool, an idiot, a failure. His board, his investors, his former executives, the media, they all thought he had committed corporate suicide. But this woman, this housekeeper, who barely made minimum wage, she understood what he had done in a way that billionaires couldn't. Thank you, Sophia, he managed to say. You have no idea how much I needed to hear that right now. Lily tapped his desk to get his attention, then signed with determination. I will help you. I will find more bad things. I'm good at seeing what others don't see. I will be your secret helper. Despite everything, despite the crushing weight of financial disaster pressing down on him, Marcus smiled. You know what, Lily? I might take you up on that. This company could use someone who notices the things everyone else misses. Someone who sees with more than just their eyes. Someone who understands that the biggest truths often come from the smallest voices. Over the next 2 weeks, Marcus learned what it truly meant to fight for survival. The board's emergency meeting resulted in a vote of no confidence, though they stopped short of removing him as CEO after Catherine presented the FBI's preliminary findings on Richard's conspiracy. The evidence bought Marcus time, but not faith. His investors were pulling out systematically, his stock was in free fall, and his company was hemorrhaging talent as executives and engineers jumped ship to competitors. He worked 18-hour days, taking meetings, making calls, pitching new deals, trying to save what he could. He sold his vacation home in the Hamptons, liquidated personal investments, and poured everything back into keeping Sterling Technologies afloat. Every day brought new fires to extinguish, new crises to manage, new losses to absorb. The tech world watched with fascinated horror as one of its brightest stars flamed out in spectacular fashion. But something unexpected was happening too, something Marcus didn't anticipate. His story was resonating with people beyond the financial world. A 6-year-old deaf girl had warned a billionaire CEO about corporate corruption, and he had listened. He had chosen to believe her over his own business partner of 12 years. He had sacrificed everything to do the right thing. That narrative, that human element, was capturing imaginations and hearts. Newspapers ran feature stories about Lily, about children with disabilities being underestimated, about the importance of listening to voices that society often ignores. Disability advocacy groups rallied around the story. Parents of deaf children sent letters thanking Marcus for showing the world that their kids were capable of extraordinary things. Social media campaigns emerged celebrating Lily's bravery and Marcus's integrity. Sophia brought Lily to the office more frequently now, partially because of Lily's increased visibility, but also because Marcus had asked them to come. He found that talking with Lily, signing with her, seeing the world through her perspective, helped him think more clearly, helped him remember why he was fighting. She would sit in his office doing her homework while he worked, occasionally signing observations about the people coming and going, about meetings she could see through the glass walls, about things that seemed funny or wrong or not right. And remarkably, she was often correct. Her observations about body language, about inconsistencies in behavior, about people who seemed nervous or deceptive, they were uncannily accurate. Marcus started to wonder if Lily's deafness had indeed given her a superpower of sorts, an ability to read visual communication that hearing people missed because they relied too heavily on words. One afternoon, 3 weeks after the collapsed Chen deal, Lily was coloring at the conference table in Marcus's office while he reviewed financial projections that grew grimmer by the hour. His head of operations, Donald Chen, was scheduled to arrive any moment for a meeting about potential restructuring. Donald had been with the company for 8 years, a steady presence, reliable and competent, if not particularly inspired. Lily looked up from her coloring suddenly, her eyes focused on something outside the glass walls. She signed to Marcus. "That man who is coming, the one with grey hair and blue tie. He's worried, very worried. He keeps looking at his phone, and his face goes tight. Something is wrong with him." Marcus followed her gaze and saw Donald approaching through the hallway, checking his phone repeatedly, his expression tense. "Lily, Donald is probably just stressed," Marcus signed back. "We all are. The company is in trouble and everyone is worried about their jobs." "No," Lily signed with unexpected firmness. "Different worry, secret worry, like the bad man before. When someone has a secret, their face does something. Their eyes go somewhere else when they talk. I see it." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. He trusted Lily's instincts now. Her observations had saved him once. Could she be seeing something again, something everyone else was missing? Donald entered the office with a professional smile and a firm handshake, but Marcus found himself watching more carefully now, looking for the things Lily had described. The meeting proceeded normally at first, discussing potential cost-cutting measures and efficiency improvements. But when Marcus mentioned exploring new partnership opportunities to replace the failed Chen Industries deal, Donald's expression flickered. Just for a second, just long enough for Marcus to see what Lily had been talking about. "Donald," Marcus said carefully, "is there something you're not telling me? Something I should know?" Donald's smile remained fixed, but his eyes did exactly what Lily had said. They went somewhere else. "I don't know what you mean, Marcus. I'm just trying to help navigate us through this crisis." Marcus glanced at Lily, who was watching Donald with an intensity that belied her age. She caught Marcus's eye and signed simply, "Lying. He's lying. I can tell." That night, Marcus asked Catherine to do another deep dive, this time into Donald Chen's communications and financial records. What she found made Richard Blackwood's betrayal look almost amateur in comparison. Donald had been the one feeding information to Richard. Donald had been the inside man, the source who had helped Richard bury those poisonous clauses in the contract where the lawyers wouldn't find them. And now, with Richard arrested and the first conspiracy unraveled, Donald was negotiating his own deal with a competitor, preparing to take key clients and proprietary technology with him when he jumped ship. Marcus confronted Donald the next morning with evidence that would lead to a second FBI investigation and another devastating headline. But this time, the damage was contained before it could explode. This time, Lily's warning had come early enough to stop the betrayal before it could fully form. As security escorted Donald from the building, Marcus returned to his office where Lily sat waiting, her homework spread across the conference table. He sat down across from her and signed with complete sincerity, "You saved me again. How do you do it? How do you see these things?" Lily considered the question seriously, her 6-year-old face thoughtful. "When you can't hear," she finally signed, "you have to watch everything. People say words, but their bodies say different things. Their faces tell secrets that their mouths don't say. Most people don't look carefully because they're too busy listening. But I have to look, so I see more. I see when something doesn't match, when someone is pretending, when something is wrong." Marcus nodded slowly, understanding dawning. "You're not disabled, Lily. You're extraordinary. Do you know that? You have a gift that most people will never have. You see truth in a world full of lies. That's not a disability, that's a superpower." Lily smiled, her whole face lighting up. "Will you teach me more?" she signed. "About business? About how to help people, about how to stop bad people? I want to learn. I want to help more." And in that moment, sitting across from a 6-year-old girl who had saved his company twice, Marcus Sterling had an idea that would change everything. Again. The idea came to Marcus fully formed, like lightning striking clear ground, illuminating a path he hadn't known existed. If Lily could see deception and betrayal where trained professionals missed it, what else could she see? What other problems could her unique perspective solve? What if he stopped thinking of her as a child who needed protection and started thinking of her as a consultant who offered something genuinely valuable? The thought was absurd, of course. She was 6 years old, but then again trusting her had saved him billions. Ignoring conventional wisdom had preserved his integrity. Maybe it was time to be absurd. Maybe absurd was exactly what Sterling Technologies needed. "Lily," Marcus signed the next morning, when she arrived with Sophia for another day at the office, "how would you like a job?" Lily's eyes went wide, and Sophia immediately shook her head. "Mr. Sterling, she's 6 years old. She can't work." "I appreciate the kindness, but not a real job," Marcus clarified, signing as he spoke so Lily could follow. "More like a special project. Lily would come to important meetings with me, and she would watch the people. She would tell me what she sees, what doesn't feel right. She would be my secret advantage, my truth detector. And in exchange, I would teach her about business, about how companies work, about leadership and decision-making. It would be educational for both of us. Sophia looked uncertain, torn between pride in her daughter and fear of putting her in a position she wasn't ready for. But Lily was already signing enthusiastically, "Yes, yes, I want to help. I want to learn, please, Mama, please." "There's more," Marcus continued, an idea building on an idea. "I want to create a program at Sterling Technologies, a youth advisory board. Kids from all different backgrounds with different abilities and disabilities who can offer perspectives that adults miss. Lily would be the first member, but we'd recruit others. We'd show the world that diverse viewpoints, including those from children, including those from people society often overlooks, those perspectives have real value. They can solve problems. They can prevent disasters. They can make companies better." Catherine Moore, who had been listening from the doorway, stepped into the office. "Marcus, I'm going to play devil's advocate here. The board is already looking for reasons to remove you. You bring a 6-year-old into executive meetings as a consultant? They're going to say you've lost your mind. The media will have a field day. Your investors will flee even faster." "Let them," Marcus said, and he was surprised by the conviction in his own voice. "Catherine, I'm tired of playing by rules that don't work. Traditional business thinking nearly destroyed this company. Richard was a conventional choice. Donald was a conventional choice. Every betrayal, every disaster, it came from following conventional wisdom. Maybe it's time to try something unconventional. Maybe it's time to listen to voices we've been ignoring." Over the next month, Marcus implemented his plan despite opposition from every corner. The board called emergency meetings. Investors threatened lawsuits. The business media mocked him mercilessly. "Sterling's last stand, billionaire hires 6-year-old consultant," read one particularly brutal headline. But Marcus pressed forward, bringing Lily into strategic planning sessions, into partnership negotiations, into investor meetings. At first, the reactions ranged from confusion to outright hostility. Grown men and women who had spent decades building their careers found themselves in rooms with a first grader who communicated through signs and an interpreter. But something remarkable began to happen. Lily's observations, delivered through Sophia, who had learned to interpret her daughter's signs, were often devastatingly accurate. She pointed out when potential partners seemed insincere in their promises. She noted when lawyers used confusing language that seemed designed to hide problems. She identified patterns in financial presentations that didn't make logical sense. And because her observations came from pure visual analysis, untainted by corporate politics or preconceptions, they carried a clarity that adult analysis often lacked. In one particularly pivotal meeting with a venture capital firm considering a rescue investment, Lily signed to Marcus, "The tall man with glasses keeps looking at the short woman when you talk about money. Every time you say a number, he looks at her, and she makes a tiny head shake. They already decided no. They're just being polite. We're wasting time." Marcus glanced at the 2 investors Lily had identified and realized she was absolutely right. The subtle communication between them was clear once you looked for it. He politely ended the meeting early, saving hours of pointless negotiations, and moved on to more promising prospects. Stories like this began to spread. Not through official channels, but through the whisper network of Silicon Valley, where reputation was currency and innovation was religion. "Sterling's got something," people started saying. "Don't know what it is, but he's seeing things others miss, making moves that don't make sense until later when you realize they were perfect." The Youth Advisory Board took shape with Lily as its founding member. Marcus recruited 7 other children, aged 6 to 12, each bringing unique perspectives. There was Tommy, a 10-year-old with autism who could see patterns in data that artificial intelligence missed. There was Aisha, an 8-year-old from Southside Chicago who understood community dynamics in ways that market research never captured. There was Marcus Jr., a 12-year-old who used a wheelchair and had spent his life navigating a world not built for him, giving him insights into accessibility and inclusive design that able-bodied engineers consistently overlooked. The children met once a week in Sterling Technologies' main conference room, a sight that initially scandalized the traditional employees, but gradually became a source of pride. The kids would review problems the company was facing, ask questions that seemed simple, but were actually profound, and offer solutions that were sometimes brilliant and sometimes adorably impractical. But even the impractical solutions often contained seeds of innovation that adult teams could develop. Sophia had been worried at first, afraid that Lily would be overwhelmed or exploited, afraid that Marcus's bold experiment would expose her daughter to criticism and failure. But what she saw instead was her daughter blossoming. Lily came home from each session bubbling with enthusiasm, signing stories about what she had learned, about the problems they had solved, about feeling important and valued and heard. "She's different now," Sophia told Marcus one evening as they watched Lily teach signs to other members of the Youth Advisory Board, more confident, more engaged with the world. Before, she would hide when strangers came near. Now she walks up to people and introduces herself. "You've given her something precious, Mr. Sterling. You've given her the feeling that she matters, that her voice, even though it's silent, can be heard." Marcus felt emotion tighten his throat. "She gave me that first, Sophia. She gave me my integrity back. She showed me what real courage looks like. I'm just trying to return the favor." But the financial situation remained dire. Despite Lily's help in avoiding further disasters, Sterling Technologies was still bleeding money from the failed Chen deal and the subsequent market panic. The stock price had stabilized somewhat but remained depressed. Key clients were still leaving. The company needed an infusion of capital and credibility, and neither was forthcoming. The board was preparing another vote of no confidence. This time, Marcus's removal seemed inevitable. Then on a grey Tuesday morning in late October, 6 weeks after the initial collapse, something unexpected happened. A representative from Goldman Sachs requested an emergency meeting. Not to pull their investment, as Marcus feared, but to discuss something else entirely. Something that would either save Sterling Technologies or deliver its final death blow. The Goldman representative, a sharp-eyed woman named Jennifer Matthews, arrived with a proposal that took Marcus's breath away. "Mr. Sterling, my firm has been watching your situation with great interest. The Chen Industries disaster, the betrayals, the restructuring, all of it. And we've also been watching your unconventional response. This Youth Advisory Board, this willingness to seek perspectives outside the traditional business framework. It's captured attention in places you might not expect." "I'm listening," Marcus said carefully, Catherine Moore beside him taking notes, Lily in the corner with her coloring books but watching with those observant eyes. "We have a client," Jennifer continued, "a consortium of investors focused on socially responsible technology companies. They're looking for firms that demonstrate innovation not just in products but in process, in culture, in values. They've been following your story, Mr. Sterling, and they're impressed. The way you stopped a corrupt deal despite the cost. The way you're incorporating diverse voices into your leadership structure. The way you're proving that integrity and profitability don't have to be enemies. They want to invest, substantially." Marcus felt his heart rate accelerate. "How substantially?" $2 billion for a 20% equity stake. It would give you breathing room to restructure properly, to rebuild client relationships, to stabilize your stock price. But there are conditions. The Youth Advisory Board must become a permanent fixture with real input into company decisions. You must commit to accessibility and inclusive design across all products. And you must allow them to document your turnaround process, to share your story as a case study in ethical business practices. $2 billion. It wasn't the $70 billion the Chen deal had promised, but it was survival. It was vindication. It was proof that doing the right thing, even when it cost everything, could ultimately pay off. "I need to discuss this with my board," Marcus said, his mind already racing through implications, possibilities, challenges. "Of course, but Mr. Sterling, we need an answer by end of business today. This offer expires at 5 p.m. After Jennifer left, Marcus sat in silence for a long moment. Catherine was already pulling up financial models, calculating how the injection of capital would affect the company's position. But Marcus's eyes were on Lily, who had stopped coloring and was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "What do you think, Lily?" he signed. "Should we take the deal?" Lily tilted her head, considering the question with the seriousness it deserved. Then she signed. The woman. She was telling the truth. Her eyes didn't go away. Her face matched her words. But what?" Marcus signed, leaning forward. "She's also scared of something. I don't know what. She wants you to say yes very much, maybe too much. Why does she need answers so fast? Why can't you think longer?" Marcus felt that now familiar chill. Lily was right. Why the arbitrary deadline? If this was such a good deal, why the pressure? He turned to Catherine. "Dig into this consortium, who they are, what they invest in, what their track record looks like. And find out why they're in such a hurry. Something doesn't feel right." Catherine nodded and left the office, already making calls. Marcus returned to Lily. "You keep saving me," he signed. "How can I ever repay you?" Lily's response was immediate and simple. "Keep teaching me, keep making me important. That's all I want, to learn, to help, to matter." By 3 p.m., Catherine returned with information that made Marcus's blood run cold for the third time in 6 weeks. The consortium was real, but their interest in Sterling Technologies wasn't purely about ethical investing. They were positioning themselves to acquire smaller tech firms, consolidate them, and then flip them for profit to larger corporations. The socially responsible angle was genuine but secondary. The real goal was to buy distressed companies cheap, clean them up, and resell them expensive. Sterling Technologies, with its collapsed stock price and desperate need for capital, was a perfect target. The $2 billion investment wasn't a rescue. It was the first step in an acquisition. If Marcus accepted, he would stabilize the company in the short term, but lose control in the long term. Within a year, maybe 2, the consortium would execute clauses in the investment agreement that would force a sale. Sterling Technologies would cease to exist as an independent entity. Marcus would be out. Again. And this time, he would have no one to blame but himself. At 4:45 p.m., 15 minutes before the deadline, Marcus called Jennifer Matthews. "Thank you for the offer," he said calmly, "but I'm going to have to decline. Sterling Technologies isn't for sale. Not directly and not indirectly through investment structures designed to facilitate acquisition. We'll find another way." The silence on the other end of the line lasted so long that Marcus wondered if the call had dropped. Then Jennifer spoke, her voice tight. "Mr. Sterling, you're making a mistake. This is your last chance to save your company. You turn down this offer, you'll be bankrupt within 6 months. Is your pride really worth that?" "It's not pride," Marcus replied. "It's principle, and yes, it's worth it every time. Goodbye, Ms. Matthews." He hung up and looked at his office, at the empire he had built and nearly lost, and might still lose. At Lily, who was watching him with those eyes that saw too much. At Catherine, who looked simultaneously impressed and terrified by what he had just done. "So," Catherine said quietly, "what now?" "Now?" Marcus stood up and walked to the window, looking out at Manhattan as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Now we do what we should have done from the start. We build this company the right way, with integrity, with diverse voices, with radical honesty. We may fail, we may lose everything, but we'll fail doing the right thing, and maybe, just maybe, that will inspire someone else to try the same thing. Maybe that will change something. Maybe that matters more than money. Lily came to stand beside him, her small hand slipping into his larger one. She didn't sign anything, she didn't need to. They stood together, a billionaire CEO and a 6-year-old deaf girl, watching the sun set on the city they both loved. Neither of them knowing what the morning would bring, but both of them certain they would face it together. In the end, Marcus thought, maybe that was what success really looked like. Not billions in the bank or deals on the front page, but finding people who saw you clearly, who told you the truth, who stood beside you when everything fell apart. Finding meaning in the doing, not just the having, finding that the smallest voice could echo the longest. Finding that integrity was worth fighting for, even when it cost you everything, especially when it cost you everything. Winter arrived in New York like an unwelcome creditor, cold and unforgiving, mirroring the financial climate surrounding Sterling Technologies. 3 months had passed since Marcus turned down the consortium's $2 billion offer. 3 months of watching his company slowly suffocate despite every effort to save it. The stock price had dropped another 20%. 2 more major clients had defected to competitors. The company's cash reserves were evaporating like morning frost under a harsh sun, and the board's patience had finally run out. The emergency meeting was scheduled for Monday morning at 9 a.m., and Marcus knew exactly what it meant. They were going to vote him out as CEO. After everything he had built, after all the sacrifices and principles and stands he had taken, it was going to end with a board resolution and a press release. He would lose the company that bore his name, the dream he had nurtured from a dorm room to a billion-dollar empire. And the worst part? He had no one to blame but himself. He had chosen integrity over survival, and survival had apparently decided not to show up. Sophia found him in his office on Sunday evening, staring at financial reports that offered no hope, no solutions, no miraculous last-minute saves. Lily was with her, bundled in a purple winter coat, her cheeks red from the cold outside. "Mr. Sterling," Sophia said gently, "you should go home. Rest. Tomorrow will be difficult. You need your strength." Marcus looked up at her. This woman who had become far more than an employee over the past months, who had become a friend and confidant, and the mother of the child who had changed his life. "Sophia, I want you to know that whatever happens tomorrow, I don't regret anything. Listening to Lily, creating the youth advisory board, turning down that consortium deal, all of it. I would make the same choices again, even knowing how it ends." "It's not over yet," Sophia said, but her voice lacked conviction. They both knew the truth. Sterling Technologies was finished. The only question was how long the death would take. Lily tugged on her mother's sleeve and signed something rapidly. Sophia translated, "She wants to know if she can see your phone, the one you use for work." Marcus frowned, confused. "My phone? Why?" More signs from Lily, more rapid than usual, her face intense with concentration. "She says she saw something earlier, when we were leaving. A man in the lobby was talking on his phone, and she read his lips. She thinks it's important. She wants to compare it to your emails." A familiar chill ran down Marcus's spine. 6 months ago, he would have dismissed this as a child's imagination. Now he handed his phone to Lily without hesitation. She took it carefully, her small fingers swiping through screens with surprising competence. Marcus had taught her how to navigate his work apps, how to spot patterns in communications, how to identify inconsistencies. It had been part of her education, part of the unique apprenticeship they had developed. But watching her now, he was struck again by how seriously she took this responsibility, how focused and methodical she was despite being only 6 years old. After 10 minutes of intense concentration, Lily looked up and signed a long, complex message that Sophia struggled to interpret in real time. She says, there's a man named Robert Chen. Not Donald Chen, but someone with the same last name. He's been emailing with someone named Victoria Patterson from the board. The emails are very polite, but Lily says the pattern is wrong. They're emailing too much for people who are supposed to be strangers. And the man in the lobby, she's certain he said the name Patterson on his phone. He said something about Monday morning, and it's finally happening, and Sterling won't see it coming. Now Marcus felt his blood freeze. Victoria Patterson was one of the board members, one of the people who would be voting on his removal tomorrow, and Robert Chen. Marcus pulled up his company directory on his laptop. Robert Chen was listed as a consultant for Chen Industries. Chen Industries, the same company that had brought the poisoned contract 6 months ago, the same company whose deal Marcus had rejected, the same company that had disappeared from the narrative after Richard's arrest. "Catherine," Marcus said into his phone, not caring that it was Sunday evening, not caring that he was probably interrupting her dinner. "I need you at the office, now. We have a problem, or maybe we have a solution. I'm not sure which yet." Catherine arrived within the hour, and together they began to unravel what Lily's observation had revealed. Victoria Patterson, it turned out, was Robert Chen's aunt by marriage. She had joined Sterling Technologies' board 2 years ago, her credentials impeccable, her references sterling. But now, looking more closely, they found connections that should have raised flags. Investments in companies that competed with Sterling. Financial ties to the same foreign consortium that had backed Richard's attempted takeover. Email communications that, when examined with Lily's insight about frequency and pattern, suggested a relationship far closer than board member and outside consultant should have. "She's been working with them from the inside," Catherine said, her voice tight with controlled fury. "All this time, while we were fighting to save the company, she's been undermining us. She's been the one convincing other board members that you're unstable, that your decisions are erratic, that the company needs new leadership. And tomorrow's vote isn't just about removing you, it's about installing their chosen replacement. Someone who will sell Sterling Technologies to Chen Industries for pennies on the dollar." Marcus looked at Lily, who was sitting in the corner with a juice box Sophia had brought, watching the adults work with those intelligent, observant eyes. "You did it again," he signed to her. "You saw what everyone else missed. You saved us again." Lily signed back. "What will you do now? The meeting is tomorrow. That's not much time." She was right, it wasn't much time. But maybe it was enough. Marcus turned to Catherine. "Get me everything you can find on Victoria Patterson and Robert Chen. Every email, every phone record, every financial transaction. I don't care if you have to work all night. We need ironclad evidence by morning." "Marcus," Catherine said carefully, "even if we expose her, the damage is done. The other board members have already made up their minds. You're still going to lose the vote." "Maybe," Marcus admitted, "but at least they'll know the truth. At least they'll understand that they've been manipulated, and maybe, just maybe, that will matter." The night stretched long and cold, fueled by coffee and determination, and the ticking clock of approaching doom. Catherine worked her network of contacts, pulling records and communications that painted a devastating picture of betrayal. Victoria Patterson had been coordinating with Chen Industries for over a year, feeding them inside information, sabotaging potential deals, and positioning herself to profit enormously when Sterling Technologies finally collapsed. The Youth Advisory Board, ironically, had been one of her favorite targets for mockery, convincing other board members that it was evidence of Marcus's instability rather than his innovation. By 6 a.m. Monday morning, they had compiled a presentation that laid out the entire conspiracy. By 7 a.m., Marcus had sent it to every board member except Victoria, along with a message, "Before you vote today, you need to see this. The betrayal didn't end with Richard Blackwood. It never ended at all." The emergency board meeting began at 9 a.m. in the main conference room, tension thick enough to cut with a knife. 15 board members sat around the table, their faces grave, their decision apparently already made. Victoria Patterson sat at the far end, her expression sympathetic and sad, the perfect mask of someone about to reluctantly vote against a friend for the good of the company. Marcus took his seat at the head of the table, Catherine beside him, and waited for the chairman to begin. But before the chairman could speak, the door opened. Lily walked in, followed by Sophia, followed by the 7 other members of the Youth Advisory Board and their parents. Marcus felt his throat tighten. He hadn't asked them to come, hadn't even told them about today's meeting, but somehow they had known. Somehow they had understood that this was the moment that mattered. "What is this?" Victoria Patterson demanded, her mask slipping slightly. "This is a closed board meeting. These children shouldn't be here." "These children," Marcus said quietly, "are the reason Sterling Technologies has survived as long as it has. They've identified 3 separate conspiracies against this company. They've saved us from betrayals that our adult executives missed entirely. And they deserve to be here for whatever happens next." He stood up, walking to the presentation screen. "Before you vote on my removal, I need to show you something. Something that a 6-year-old girl discovered yesterday because she was watching when everyone else was blind." What followed was 15 minutes of devastating revelation. The emails, the financial connections, the coordination with Chen Industries, Victoria Patterson's systematic sabotage of Sterling Technologies from her position of trust. As the evidence mounted, the expressions around the table shifted from skeptical to shocked to furious. Victoria tried to interrupt, tried to explain, tried to dismiss it as coincidence and misunderstanding, but her voice grew weaker with each new piece of evidence, until finally she fell silent, her face pale, her mask completely shattered. "You used us," one board member said, his voice shaking with anger. "You used our trust, our concerns, our legitimate worries about the company's direction, and you weaponized them. You made us pawns in your scheme to destroy what we were trying to protect." "I was trying to save the company," Victoria said desperately. "Marcus's decisions were killing us." The Chen Industries deal would have been good for everyone. His refusal to accept reality, his obsession with these children, his reckless gambling on integrity over profit, it was destroying shareholder value. I was doing what was necessary. You were committing corporate espionage and conspiracy to commit fraud, Catherine interjected coldly. "The FBI has already been notified. They're very interested in talking to you about your relationship with the foreign consortium that backed Richard Blackwood's attempted takeover." The room erupted in voices, accusations, demands for Victoria's immediate removal. The chairman called for order, his face red with anger and embarrassment. In the chaos, Marcus felt a small hand slip into his. He looked down to see Lily standing beside him, her expression serious and supportive. She signed simply, "You were right. Doing good is hard, but it's worth it." The vote that followed was not about Marcus's removal. It was about Victoria Patterson's expulsion from the board, about criminal referrals to authorities, about damage control and rebuilding trust. Marcus's position as CEO was never questioned again that morning. Instead, the board offered something he hadn't expected: their full support, their apologies for doubting him, and their commitment to the unconventional path he had chosen for the company. One board member, a venture capitalist named Sarah Chen, unrelated to the other Chens who had caused so much trouble, stood to speak. "Marcus, I owe you an apology. We all do. You saw corruption where we saw opportunity. You listened to voices we dismissed. You chose integrity when we counseled compromise. You were right, and we were wrong. The question now is, what do we do next? Because the problems Victoria created, the financial hemorrhaging, the client losses, those are still real. We still need capital. We still need a path forward." Marcus looked around the table, at these men and women who had doubted him and now believed in him, who had been ready to remove him and were now asking him to lead them. He thought about the past 6 months, about the price he had paid for doing what he believed was right. He thought about Lily and the Youth Advisory Board and all the voices that society told him to ignore. And he thought about what kind of company he wanted Sterling Technologies to be, not just for himself, but for everyone who believed in it. "We move forward by doubling down," he said finally. "Not on short-term profit, but on long-term value. Not on conventional wisdom, but on radical innovation. We make the Youth Advisory Board official and permanent. We invest in accessibility and inclusive design, not because it's profitable, but because it's right, and trust that profitability will follow. We rebuild client relationships based on honesty and transparency. We look for investors who share our values, even if they offer less money than those who don't. We prove that a company can be both ethical and successful, even if it takes longer and costs more than the alternative." "That's a beautiful vision," Sarah Chen said. "But visions don't pay salaries or keep the lights on. We need concrete plans. We need revenue. We need time that we don't have." "Then we buy time," Marcus replied. "I have personal assets left, real estate, investments, the things I kept separate from the company. I'll liquidate everything. It won't be enough to solve all our problems, but it will give us breathing room. 6 months, maybe a year, to prove that this approach works. If I'm wrong, if we fail, at least we'll fail trying something worth believing in." The room fell silent. Board members exchanging glances, calculating risks and possibilities. Finally, Sarah Chen nodded. "All right, Marcus. You've earned our trust. Let's see if your way works. But understand this, we're all betting on you now. Don't make us regret it." Marcus looked at Lily, who was watching him with complete faith, complete trust, certain that he would do the right thing because he always had. "I'll do my best," he said. "That's all I can promise. My best, and the truth. And the belief that doing good is worth the cost. It has to be enough, because it's all we've got." Spring came late to New York that year, as if winter was reluctant to release its grip on a city that had seen too much struggle and too little hope. But when it finally arrived in late April, it brought with it something unexpected: momentum. The months following the board meeting had been brutal, no question about that. Marcus had liquidated nearly everything he personally owned, pouring millions into Sterling Technologies to keep it afloat while they rebuilt. He sold his penthouse and moved to a modest apartment in Brooklyn. He sold his cars, his art collection, his investment portfolio, everything except the company and his integrity, those he kept. The Youth Advisory Board had become the heart of Sterling Technologies' transformation. What had started as Marcus's desperate gamble on unconventional wisdom had evolved into something genuinely revolutionary. The kids met 3 times a week now, reviewing product designs, testing user interfaces, identifying accessibility issues that professional engineers missed, and offering perspectives on company culture that made senior executives uncomfortable and, ultimately, better at their jobs. Lily remained the star, her ability to read body language and spot deception making her invaluable in partnership negotiations and client meetings. But the other children had proven equally remarkable in their own ways. Tommy's pattern recognition had identified inefficiencies in the company's code that saved thousands of hours of processing time. Aisha's understanding of community dynamics had revolutionized Sterling's approach to user engagement. Marcus Jr.'s insights into accessibility had led to product features that opened entirely new markets. The media, which had mocked Marcus mercilessly 6 months earlier, was starting to tell a different story. Feature articles appeared in major publications. The Billionaire Who Chose Integrity Over Empire, How a 6-Year-Old Saved a Tech Company, the revolutionary leadership model that puts children in the boardroom. The coverage was generating interest from an unexpected source. Customers who were tired of corporate greed and wanted to support companies that operated differently. Sterling Technologies' customer base began to shift. They lost the massive corporate clients who only cared about bottom-line pricing, but they gained thousands of smaller customers who valued the company's ethical approach, its commitment to accessibility, its willingness to listen to diverse voices. The revenue wasn't as large, but it was steady and growing. More importantly, it was sustainable. The company was building something that could last, something based on values rather than just value. But the financial situation remained precarious. Marcus's personal injection of capital had bought time, but that time was running out. They needed a major breakthrough, a significant win that would prove to investors and the market that Sterling Technologies' approach wasn't just noble, it was viable. That breakthrough came from an unexpected direction, and like everything else that had saved the company, it started with Lily noticing something others missed. The Sterling Technologies offices had been hosting a visiting delegation from the Department of Education, officials interested in the Youth Advisory Board model as a potential approach for incorporating student voice into educational policy. Lily had been part of the presentation, demonstrating how the board worked, explaining through Sophia's interpretation how she analyzed situations and identified problems. After the formal presentation ended, the delegation was touring the facilities when Lily suddenly grabbed Marcus's sleeve and signed urgently, "The woman in the blue suit. The one with the grey hair. She keeps looking at Tommy. Every time Tommy talks about patterns and numbers, her eyes get very big. She's excited about something. Very excited. But she's not saying anything. Why isn't she saying anything?" Marcus followed Lily's gaze to Dr. Patricia Reeves, the Assistant Secretary of Education, who was indeed watching Tommy with intense interest. Marcus maneuvered to walk beside her as the tour continued. "Dr. Reeves, you seem particularly interested in Tommy's work. Is there something specific that caught your attention?" Dr. Reeves hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. "Mr. Sterling, can we speak privately? There's something I'd like to discuss with you, something that could be mutually beneficial." They returned to Marcus's office, now much smaller than his previous executive suite, furnished simply with IKEA furniture instead of designer pieces. Dr. Reeves didn't seem to notice or care. She sat down and spoke with the directness of someone who had spent too long in bureaucracy and appreciated straightforward conversation. "Mr. Sterling, the Department of Education has a problem. We've spent 5 years and $300 million developing an educational software platform meant to personalize learning for students with different learning styles and abilities. It's been a disaster. The software is clunky, teachers hate it, students can't use it effectively, and we're facing massive criticism for wasting taxpayer money. We need to either fix it or scrap it entirely, and scrapping it would be a political nightmare." Marcus leaned forward, interested despite himself. "And you think Sterling Technologies can help fix it?" "I think Tommy can help fix it," Dr. Reeves corrected. "Or rather, I think your Youth Advisory Board can help fix it. The problem with our platform is that it was designed by adults who thought they understood how children learn, but they didn't actually involve children in the design process. The interface is too complicated. The personalization algorithms don't account for how kids actually think and process information, and the accessibility features are technically compliant but practically useless. I watched Tommy analyze a data pattern in under 30 seconds that our engineers spent months trying to understand. I watched your other board members identify user experience issues that professional UX designers missed. You've built something remarkable here, Mr. Sterling, something the government desperately needs. What exactly are you proposing? A contract, a significant one. Sterling Technologies would take over the platform redesign, with the explicit requirement that your youth advisory board be central to the process. We want children designing for children, adults with disabilities designing for accessibility, diverse voices creating something that actually serves diverse needs. It's unconventional, probably controversial, and exactly what we need. The contract would be worth $50 million over 2 years, with potential for expansion if the initial results are promising. Marcus felt his heart rate accelerate. $50 million would stabilize the company completely. It would prove that Sterling Technologies' approach wasn't just ethically right, but commercially viable. It would vindicate everything he had sacrificed, but he forced himself to slow down, to think carefully, to not let desperation override judgment. Dr. Reeves, I'm going to ask you something directly, and I need you to answer honestly. Is this contract legitimate? Is it legally sound? Are there any hidden clauses or complications that we should know about? Because we've learned the hard way to be very careful about deals that seem too good to be true. Dr. Reeves smiled, a genuine expression of respect. Mr. Sterling, I know your history. I know what you've been through. This contract is completely transparent. It will go through the standard government procurement process, which means it will be reviewed by approximately 50 different people and committees before it's finalized. It will be the most scrutinized, most publicly visible contract Sterling Technologies has ever signed. There's no room for corruption or hidden agendas. The only risk is that you won't be able to deliver what we need. Marcus looked at the door where Lily and the other youth advisory board members were waiting, where Sophia stood watching with hopeful eyes, where Catherine was already pulling up contract templates on her laptop. He thought about the journey that had brought them here, about every betrayal and every sacrifice, about choosing integrity over expedience again and again, even when it cost him everything. We can deliver, he said quietly. Not because we're the biggest or the best funded or the most experienced, but because we listen to the right voices. Because we've learned that the most valuable perspectives often come from the most unexpected sources. Because we've built something different here, something that sees what others miss. Yes, Dr. Reeves, we're very interested in this contract. The next 3 months were a whirlwind of activity, media attention and vindication. The government contract was announced publicly, generating headlines that told a very different story than the ones from a year earlier. From near collapse to government partner, Sterling Technologies' remarkable turnaround. The Youth Advisory Board that revolutionized a company and caught government attention. Marcus Sterling proves that integrity and profit can coexist. The Youth Advisory Board threw themselves into the educational software redesign with enthusiasm and creativity that professional developers found both inspiring and humbling. Tommy revolutionized the personalization algorithms, creating systems that adapted to how children actually learned rather than how adults thought they should learn. Lily worked with the accessibility team, testing every feature to ensure that deaf students could use the platform as effectively as hearing students. Aisha redesigned the community features, creating spaces where students could learn from each other in ways that felt natural rather than forced. The work was challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exhausting, but it was also joyful in a way that corporate work rarely was. The children approached problems with creativity, unconstrained by conventional thinking. They asked questions that seemed simple, but revealed profound truths about user experience and design philosophy. They brought energy and enthusiasm that revitalized Sterling Technologies' entire culture. Marcus watched it all with a mixture of pride, gratitude, and wonder. He had lost almost everything personal he owned, but he had gained something more valuable: proof that his choices had been right, proof that doing good was worth the cost, proof that the smallest voices could change the largest systems. The company's stock price was recovering, clients were returning. The board that had nearly removed him was now praising him at investor meetings. Sterling Technologies was becoming profitable again, not through luck or manipulation, but through genuine innovation built on ethical foundations. But Marcus knew better than to celebrate too early. He had learned that lesson the hard way. Richard's betrayal, Victoria Patterson's sabotage, the consortium's hidden agenda, every disaster had come disguised as triumph. So even as success seemed to finally arrive, Marcus remained vigilant, watching for the next trap, the next betrayal, the next disaster waiting to strike. He didn't have to wait long. The attack came from a direction he never expected, and it targeted the one person he had sworn to protect above all others. It came for Lily. The article appeared on a Friday morning in June, published by a tabloid known for sensationalism and manufactured controversy, child labor or corporate exploitation. The dark side of Sterling Technologies' Youth Advisory Board. The piece was brutal, painting Marcus as a manipulative billionaire using disadvantaged children for profit, depicting the Youth Advisory Board as a publicity stunt that exploited vulnerable kids for corporate gain. It featured anonymous quotes from education experts and child welfare advocates, questioning the appropriateness of involving young children in high-stakes business decisions. It included photos of Lily at company events, accompanied by captions that made her involvement seem sinister rather than inspiring. But the truly devastating part was the focus on Lily specifically. The article revealed details about her background that Sophia had never made public, about her father's death when she was 3, about Sophia's struggles as a single mother, about financial difficulties that the article implied made Sophia vulnerable to exploitation by a wealthy employer. It portrayed Lily not as an intelligent, capable child who had made remarkable contributions, but as a victim being paraded around by Marcus Sterling to rehabilitate his damaged reputation. Marcus read the article 3 times, his hands shaking with rage and fear. This wasn't journalism. This was an assassination attempt, carefully crafted to destroy everything they had built by targeting the most vulnerable person involved. And it was working. Within hours, social media was exploding with outrage. Child welfare organizations were demanding investigations. Politicians who had praised the Youth Advisory Board were suddenly distancing themselves. The Department of Education was receiving calls to cancel the contract. Everything was falling apart again, and this time the weapon wasn't corporate conspiracy, it was public opinion. Sophia arrived at Marcus's office in tears, Lily beside her looking confused and frightened by her mother's distress. "Mr. Sterling, I'm so sorry. I never told anyone those things about our family. I don't know how they found out. I don't know who would do this. Lily is happy here. She loves working with you, loves learning, loves feeling important. This article, it makes everything seem wrong and dirty when it was beautiful." Marcus knelt down in front of Lily, who was watching him with those observant eyes, reading his expression with her usual accuracy. "Are you okay?" he signed. "This article, these lies about you and your mom, are you okay?" Lily signed back slowly, thoughtfully. "I'm scared. People are angry. They think you're bad. They think I'm being hurt. But I'm not being hurt. I'm happy. Why don't they believe me? Why doesn't my voice matter?" And there it was, the question that cut to the heart of everything. Why didn't Lily's voice matter? Why did adults assume they knew better than the child herself whether she was being exploited? Why did society doubt her intelligence, her agency, her ability to know her own experience? The same society that had ignored her warnings about Richard Blackwood now claimed to be protecting her by silencing her again. Marcus felt something crystallize inside him, a clarity born of having lost everything and found his way back. He stood up and turned to Catherine, who had been monitoring the social media explosion on her laptop. Set up a press conference, not a corporate statement. A real press conference, open to everyone, including the tabloid that published this garbage. Tomorrow afternoon. And Catherine, I want Lily there. I want all the Youth Advisory Board members there. Because this isn't about defending Sterling Technologies. This is about defending their voices, their value, their right to be heard. Marcus, Catherine said carefully, putting Lily in front of cameras right now, after these accusations, it could backfire spectacularly. People are angry. They might see it as further exploitation. Then we change their minds, Marcus said firmly. We show them who Lily really is. We let her speak for herself. Or rather, we let her sign for herself. Because her voice, even though it's silent, is the loudest truth in this entire mess. The press conference was held in Sterling Technologies' main auditorium, packed with journalists, cameras, and the crackling energy of a story that had captured national attention. Marcus stood at the podium, flanked by Sophia and Lily on one side, the other Youth Advisory Board members and their families on the other. The room was hostile. He could feel it in the aggressive questions being shouted before he even began to speak. But he had faced hostile rooms before. He had faced betrayal and conspiracy and financial ruin. He could face this too. Thank you all for coming, Marcus began, his voice calm despite the turmoil. I know why you're here. You've read the article. You have questions about the Youth Advisory Board, about Lily Martinez specifically, about whether Sterling Technologies is exploiting children for corporate gain. Those are fair questions, and they deserve honest answers. But before I provide those answers, I want to do something unconventional. I want to let the children speak for themselves. He stepped back from the podium, and Lily stepped forward. She was wearing a simple blue dress, her dark hair pulled back, her hands already moving before Sophia had even positioned herself to interpret. The room fell silent, the aggressive energy shifting to curiosity as Lily began to sign, her movements clear and deliberate, her expression serious. Sophia's voice filled the auditorium, translating, "My name is Lily Martinez. I am 6 years old. I am deaf. For most of my life, people looked at me and saw someone who was less than, someone who couldn't understand, someone who didn't matter. They spoke over me like I wasn't there. They made decisions for me without asking what I wanted. They assumed that because I couldn't hear, I couldn't think. Then I met Mr. Sterling. He learned sign language for me. Not because he had to, because he wanted to talk to me. To really talk to me, not at me. He asked me questions. He listened to my answers. He trusted me when I told him something was wrong. He believed in me when everyone else ignored me." Lily paused, her hands still for a moment, then continued signing with increased intensity. Sophia's voice rose with emotion. "The article said I am being exploited, that Mr. Sterling is using me. But using me for what? To teach me about business? To help me learn new things? To make me feel smart and important and capable? If that's exploitation, then I want more of it. The truth is that Mr. Sterling has given me something precious. He has given me a voice. Not literally. I will always be deaf. But he has given me a place where my voice matters, where people listen, where what I see and think and feel has value. He hasn't hurt me. He has saved me. He has shown me that I can be more than what people assume when they look at me." The room was completely silent now. Journalists who had come ready to write stories of exploitation, finding themselves confronted with something they hadn't expected. a child who was articulate, thoughtful, and completely certain of her own experience. Lily wasn't finished. Her hands moved faster now, passionate and clear. I know some of you think I'm too young to make decisions, too young to work, too young to understand what's happening, but I saved Sterling Technologies. Not once, but 3 times. I saw betrayal that adults missed. I spotted lies that trained professionals overlooked. I identified problems that experienced executives couldn't find. I did that. Me, a 6-year-old deaf girl who supposedly doesn't understand business. Maybe the problem isn't that I'm too young to contribute. Maybe the problem is that adults assume children like me have nothing to contribute. Maybe the problem is that society would rather protect me from opportunities than trust me to handle them. Lily turned to look directly at the journalist who had written the original article, making eye contact with such intensity that the woman visibly flinched. "You wrote that article about me without talking to me. You told my story without hearing my voice. You decided you knew better than I did whether I was happy or hurt. You took away my agency while claiming to protect me. That's not protection. That's silencing, and I'm done being silenced." She stepped back from the podium, and one by one, the other Youth Advisory Board members came forward. Tommy spoke about how Sterling Technologies had valued his autism as a gift rather than a disability, how his pattern recognition skills had gone from being something that made him weird to something that made him valuable. Aisha talked about growing up poor in Chicago and believing she had nothing to offer the business world, only to discover that her understanding of community was exactly what tech companies needed. Marcus Jr. described years of being overlooked because of his wheelchair, until Sterling Technologies showed him that his perspective was an asset, not a limitation. Each child told a story of being underestimated and then empowered. Each one challenged the narrative of exploitation with lived experience of opportunity. By the time they finished, the hostile room had transformed into something else entirely. Journalists were wiping their eyes. Cameras that had come to capture a scandal were instead recording something profound. Children claiming their own voices and demanding to be heard on their own terms. Marcus returned to the podium, his throat tight with emotion. "I can't tell you that the Youth Advisory Board has been without challenges. I can't tell you that involving children in business decisions is always easy or comfortable. What I can tell you is that it's been the best decision Sterling Technologies has ever made. These kids have saved this company repeatedly. They've brought insights and perspectives that I never would have considered. They've made us better at everything we do. And yes, we compensate them. We pay them for their time and expertise, just as we would any consultant. We invest in their education and their futures. We treat them with the respect and seriousness their contributions deserve." He paused, looking at the faces in the crowd, seeing skepticism transforming into consideration, hostility softening into curiosity. "I know what you're thinking. This is unconventional, maybe even radical. Children belong in schools, not boardrooms. They should be protected from the pressures of the adult world. And there's truth in that. We have strict guidelines about how often the Youth Advisory Board meets, about ensuring their involvement never interferes with their education or well-being, about maintaining appropriate boundaries. But here's what I've learned over the past year. Protecting children doesn't mean silencing them. Keeping them safe doesn't mean keeping them powerless. Sometimes the most dangerous thing we can do is teach children that their voices don't matter, that adults always know better, that they should wait until they're grown to start contributing to the world. Marcus felt tears threatening but pushed through. Lily Martinez saved my company because I listened to her when logic said I shouldn't. A 6-year-old child had the courage to warn me about corruption, and I had the wisdom to believe her. That choice cost me billions in the short term, but it saved my integrity, my company, and maybe my soul. If that's exploitation, Then I'm guilty as charged, but I prefer to call it something else. I call it respect. I call it recognizing that wisdom and insight don't have age requirements. I call it building a world where children like Lily aren't just protected, but empowered, where their voices matter not someday, but right now. The questions that followed were different than the ones journalists had come ready to ask. Instead of accusatory demands about child labor laws and exploitation, they asked about the Youth Advisory Board's structure, about how to balance protection with empowerment, about what other companies could learn from Sterling Technologies' approach. The narrative was shifting in real time, transforming from scandal to inspiration. By the time the press conference ended 2 hours later, Marcus knew they had won, not because they had defended themselves against accusations, but because they had told a better story, a true story, a story about children finding their voices and adults having the wisdom to listen. The aftermath was swift and decisive. The tabloid that had published the original article faced backlash for its irresponsible journalism and was forced to issue a retraction. Child welfare investigations found no evidence of exploitation, only glowing reports from the children and their families about the positive impact of the program. The Department of Education reaffirmed their contract with enthusiastic praise for Sterling Technologies' approach. Other government agencies began reaching out about similar projects. Private sector interest exploded, with dozens of companies inquiring about how to implement their own youth advisory programs. Sterling Technologies' stock price didn't just recover, it soared. The company that had nearly collapsed a year earlier was now valued higher than ever, not because of a mega merger or corporate acquisition, but because they had proven that doing good was good business, that integrity could be profitable, that listening to diverse voices, including those of children, could drive innovation and success. Marcus found himself profiled in business magazines as a visionary leader who had revolutionized corporate culture. He won awards for ethical business practices and innovative management. Speaking invitations poured in from universities, conferences, and corporate retreats. But the moment that mattered most came on a quiet evening in late summer, when Lily and Sophia visited his office one last time before Lily started second grade. Marcus had something to give them. He pulled out an envelope, official and formal, and handed it to Sophia. "This is for Lily's college fund. It's the compensation she's earned from her work with the Youth Advisory Board, plus investment returns and a substantial bonus for her exceptional contributions. By the time she's 18, it should be more than enough to pay for any college she wants to attend, with money left over for graduate school if she chooses." Sophia's hands shook as she opened the envelope and saw the amount. Tears streamed down her face. "Mr. Sterling, this is too much. We can't accept this. It's too generous." "It's not generous," Marcus corrected gently. "It's what she earned, what she deserves. Lily saved this company 3 times. She's been consulted on decisions worth millions of dollars. She's contributed insights that professional consultants would charge 6 figures to provide. This isn't charity, Sophia. It's payment for services rendered. It's recognition that her work had value, real measurable value." He turned to Lily, signing carefully. "You changed my life. You showed me what real courage looks like. You taught me that the most important voices are often the ones we're not listening to. You saved me from becoming someone I would have hated, someone who chose money over integrity, power over principles. I can never repay that, but I can make sure you have every opportunity to become whatever you want to be. Thank you, Lily. Thank you for being brave. Thank you for speaking up. Thank you for refusing to be invisible." Lily signed back through her tears. "Thank you for listening. Thank you for believing me. Thank you for showing me that I matter. I'm going to be just like you when I grow up. I'm going to listen to the voices that everyone else ignores. I'm going to stand up for what's right even when it's hard. I'm going to remember that the smallest voice can tell the biggest truth. Marcus pulled her into a hug, this remarkable child who had changed everything, who had shown him that wisdom had no age limit, that courage could come in the smallest packages, that sometimes the people everyone else overlooked were the ones who saw most clearly. Years later, when Marcus retired from Sterling Technologies and handed the CEO position to a successor who had learned from the Youth Advisory Board model, when he looked back on his career and tried to identify the single most important decision he had ever made, the answer was always the same. It wasn't the products he had developed, or the deals he had closed, or the billions he had earned. It was the moment he had knelt down in a boardroom and believed a 6-year-old deaf girl who was trying to warn him about danger. It was the choice to trust the smallest voice in the room when logic said he shouldn't. It was the decision to value integrity over empire, principle over profit, truth over triumph, because in the end, that choice had given him everything. It had saved his company, preserved his soul, and taught him the most important lesson of his life, that doing the right thing, even when it costs you everything, is always worth it. Always. The smallest voice had become the loudest truth, and Marcus Sterling had listened.